Welcome to the first episode of Open Surgery, the podcast where no issue is off limits, no question too controversial, and no community too small to make a difference. I'm your host, Edwin Duggan, campaigner, advocate, and someone who's spent years working on the front line of change. From Jade's Law to knife crime prevention, I've built my campaigning around one guiding principle: to listen first and act second. And this podcast, it's an extension of that mission. Whether we're talking about rising crime in our communities, the decisions made in Westminster, or the voices too often ignored in areas like Allen and Deeside. This space is for honest conversation, uncomfortable truths, and meaningful action. So, what to expect? Well, each episode will dive into a different issue, local, national, or even global if it affects us right here at home. Topics might range from youth violence and knife crime prevention, mental health support in schools and communities, political accountability and policy gaps, social justice, inequality, and education reform. Real stories from people making a difference or struggling to be heard. And it won't just be me speaking into the mic. You'll hear from frontline workers, campaigners, students, parents, politicians, and sometimes people whose views you might disagree with, because change does not happen in an echo chamber. Here's the promise. You send the question and I will answer it. Whether it's a tough ask about government policy or police actions or social tensions, I won't shy away from the difficult stuff. We've got to be willing to sit with discomfort if we are ever to realise real solutions. You can submit your questions through my website at edwinduggan.co.uk or via social media like Facebook or Instagram. And every few episodes I'll dedicate some time specifically to answering your toughest questions, candidly and constructively. Why does this matter? Well, it's because I've seen what happens when voices are ignored, when young people feel unheard, when communities feel dismissed, and when policies are made without those most affected at the table. This podcast is about flipping that script. It's about making sure that our concerns, yours and mine, don't just echo in silence, but resonate in power. We're building something here, a space for dialogue, a space for action, a space where being a small town doesn't mean being left behind. So let's get started. If you're listening, that means you're ready to engage. You care about your community. You want answers, and most of all, you're not afraid to ask the hard questions. And that makes you exactly who this podcast is for. So, without further ado, let's begin with a question from one of my neighbours that was asked last week concerning the Lucy Letby case, of all things. This was a difficult one for many reasons, but I will attempt to answer it. And I know that there will be some who will totally disagree with my views. However, that's what this podcast is all about, opening the floor for discussion on those issues which do not always sit right with everyone. So what happens with the Lucy Letby case? What happens when the pursuit of justice collides with public outrage? When institutional failure hides behind a guilty verdict? When the complexity of truth is sacrificed for the simplicity of blame? These are the questions that I've asked myself, and we must confront all of us together as we revisit one of the most chilling and controversial cases in recent history. The convictions of Lucy Letby, who, as we all know, was the neonatal nurse from the Countess of Chester and was accused of the most unimaginable crimes. The loss of any child is heartbreaking, and that pain must be acknowledged and honoured. But our justice system isn't designed to validate feelings alone. It is designed to uphold fairness, rigour, and the presumption of innocence. And this is the biggest thing that I've been thinking about, even under the most intense scrutiny. So, today I won't argue the guilt or the innocence of Lucy Letby. Instead, I will ask, were these convictions truly safe? And we first must go towards the circumstantial evidence. At the heart of the prosecution's case, there was no actual direct evidence. There were no eyewitnesses, there was no CCTV footage, fingerprints or DNA. What remained were patterns, and this is what the prosecution depended upon. Lucy Letby was present during multiple unexplained deaths. But let's be honest, the mere presence of someone is not proof. That's in my opinion anyway. The statistical model used in court focused narrowly on specific incidents linked to Letby's shifts, excluding the other deaths and collapses that occurred when she wasn't on duty. This skewed selection created an illusion of pattern, triggering confirmation bias. The dangerous tendency to search for evidence that supports an existing belief while ignoring anything that contradicts it. For instance, the Royal Statistical Society formally raised concerns, and other independent analysts concluded that the data was misused, and that alone should prompt pause. The medical expert review. Neonatal medicine is fraught with uncertainty. These are vulnerable lives clinging to fragile health. A coalition of 14 international medical experts reviewed the case and found no clear medical evidence or wrongdoing. Instead, they offered plausible alternative causes. For instance, air embolisms, neonatal sepsis, undiagnosed clotting disorders, and tragically, common failures in medical procedure. One of the doctors, Dr. Shu Lee, a respected neonatologist, called the Chester unit an accident waiting to happen due to its poor operational standards. This is not just a red flag, it's a siren. If the hospital environment was compromised, how was individual culpability isolated with such certainty? Among the most damning evidence were Letby's handwritten notes. Phrases like, "I am evil" and "I did this." But these weren't confessions scribbled in secrecy. They were journaling exercises from counselling, encouraged by professionals to confront intrusive thoughts. Mental health support often involves externalizing irrational guilt. To label that as an admission is like mistaking a dream for reality. If we criminalize therapeutic language, we risk punishing trauma and re-traumatizing the vulnerable. Right, so former Supreme Justice, for instance, former Supreme Justice Lord Sumpton, someone with no political motive and deep understanding of legal standards, has said plainly that Letby is probably innocent. He believes the case was built on assumption rather than substance and has called for a judicial review. Letby's legal team has changed and new avenues of appeal are being pursued through the Criminal Cases Review Commission. This is not merely procedural. It's a signal that significant doubt lingers in the highest levels of law. When the system begins to question itself, we must listen, not for Letby alone, but for every future defendant who could be tried on weak patterns and emotional sway. And then we have to look at the media, the emotion and public pressure. We must also acknowledge the role of media coverage. From the moment of arrest, Letby was portrayed as a monster. Headlines screamed guilt, social media swirled with fury, and public opinion hardened. And in such an environment, how does a jury remain impartial? How does a trial remain focused? This trial was not held in a vacuum. It unfurled under a cloud of moral panic and institutional reputation management. Some believe Letby became a scapegoat, a solitary figure to absorb public rage and institutional shame. That possibility must be taken seriously. Of course, there are grieving families who feel this case brought closure, and their pain must not be erased by debate. Their voices matter deeply, but so do the voices of other nurses who now fear being accused over unexplained medical failures. So do the voices of legal experts raising alarms? Or do the people whose faith in our justice system that depends on not on punishment but on precision? Justice must balance empathy with objectivity. It must remain vigilant, especially when a case touches national nerves. So in conclusion, all I can say is that the case must be re-examined. Because if we do not challenge Letby's conviction, we fail many people, not only the victims and their families, but future people who may well be facing similar charges. Letby's conviction, does it provoke outrage? Of course it does. But we should re-examine the case to uphold the fundamental principles of justice. The evidence must be complete, not curated. Medical complexity requires expertise and not assumptions. Therapy is a space for healing and not incrimination. And that even the most harrowing trials must be fair. And above all, the very foundation of our justice system, that when doubt exists, it must not be dismissed. It must be confronted, explored and answered. And if Lucy Letby is guilty, then truth will uphold that. But if she is not, then every delay in re-examination deepens the injustice, not only for her, but for every baby, every family and every professional swept up in a system unwilling to reflect on its own mistakes. We owe justice more than certainty. We owe it the courage to ask again. So I hope that's answered the question. I've answered it the best way I can. If you've got any comments or you want me to expand on this particular issue further, then please get in touch. Next, I had a question last week sent to me from Councillor Rachel Fenwick of Connah's Quay Town Council. And it focuses on, well, some of the work that I'm doing really. And she says, with knife crime on the rise again in our UK cities, my concern is that it is not going to be long before it is widespread in our smaller towns and communities. A huge worry for Deeside. Do you believe the new government is taking any meaningful action to address the root causes? How can grassroots organisations, schools and local councils work together more effectively to prevent young people from picking up a knife in the first place? Well, first and foremost, thank you, Councillor Fenwick, for submitting the question. And here are my thoughts. Knife crime is no longer confined to our major cities, and I've been saying this for quite some time. It's creeping into smaller towns, such as Deeside, and indeed, only a few weeks ago, there was an incident in Flint, where a couple of pupils were outside a school and they were threatened by a masked man with a knife. Thankfully, nobody was injured in that, but it just goes to show that these incidents are becoming more and more common, even in our smaller towns and villages. It's not just a big city problem like Sheffield and Manchester, Liverpool and Birmingham and London, where I've been reporting on incidents throughout the last couple of years. And so what is the government doing? Well, as you know, people who know me will know that I've been up and down the country over the last couple of years now. I've been to Parliament many times, trying my best to speak and to make contact with different MPs and government departments. And since the new government came into place last year, there are some promising government schemes, but my question is, are they deep enough? Now, you've got the government's pledged to tackle knife crime through initiatives like Young Futures Hubs and prevention partnership panels. That's all well and good, but do they really work? I'm not so sure at the moment. Only time will tell. But at least it's a step in the right direction. And those particular organisations and panels, they aim to support at-risk youth and coordinate early intervention, which again is something which I've advocated for. I truly believe that the future of knife crime prevention is with education, and if you can get young kids as young as possible to change their mindset, perhaps these things will become lessened. I'm not saying for one moment that knife crime will disappear, but all we can do is educate and reduce those incidents. As I said, what I'm doing as a human rights advocate and anti-knife crime campaigner is that one of the things I've done is I've written a book in the last few months. It's called Breaking the Chain: Your Life, Choice and Future. And in my opinion, and it would be my opinion because I'm the author, but I think it is a powerful resource, and it explores the root causes of knife crime and offers young people a path, a way forward. And it also gives teachers, in my opinion, again, a really good aid memoir to create lessons around the book and its contents, and perhaps they can educate the children in their school on a similar thing. I've also been campaigning fervently for the last 18 months now. Longer than that actually, 2 years, for the government to create a dedicated minister for knife crime or a commissioner, because I believe that there should be one set department in government to deal with knife crime solely. Yes, you've got the Home Office, and there's obviously a crime department, crime prevention department within the Home Office, and yes, they are dealing with knife crime. But again, I go back to my original feelings on this. I always think it's a knee-jerk reaction. For instance, when the 3 young girls from Southport were horrifically murdered. Knee-jerk reaction, Parliament got together, they had a massive debate, banning zombie knives, banning this, that and the other. But again, by December of that year, a backbench group held a further debate on knife crime. It was spurred by my campaigning. I was mentioned within the chamber, but again, it was only attended by a small number of MPs, and it wasn't given very much time at all, really, within the House. And I then wrote to every single MP within that conversation and within that debate on that day in December. And guess how many people replied? And I will tell you now, none whatsoever. So, again, going back to what I've been doing, I've been collaborating with North Wales Police, and I must mention the Police and Crimes Commissioner, Andy Dunbobbin, who has basically given me time and effort. I've tried my best to expand Operation Sceptre to make it an all year round operation where there's a knife amnesty all year round, rather than just the 2 weeks in a year, once every 6 months, so people can give their knives in wherever they are. I think they should be in supermarkets, and they should be made available everywhere, because obviously some young individuals in general wouldn't particularly want to go to a police station no matter what was said. An amnesty, they'll still be a bit wary of authority. I've partnered with the Benkinsala Trust in London in order to develop a tailored education package for schools in North Wales. Try my best to launch that soon. It was meant to, but there we are. It's funding again. It's funding. I mean, I'm just a one-man band, really. I've got a few people behind me who do a great deal of work, but without any funding as such, we can't really do much with that. I'm hoping that the Crime Commissioner will open some funding up to me later on. But there we are. And I would really love, I'm trying my best to engage directly with schools and councils. I can offer presentations and resources to speak to young people. I'm even quite prepared to go to any council, be it a town council, county council, not just in this area but across the country, to present what my feelings are on how organisations should make this education available to everybody within their wards and their council areas. So let's have a look. We've got I truly believe that it needs to be thought about in a joined up way. What I've found over the past couple of years is that you have institutions, organisations which have all got their merits, but they don't seem to want to share anything with another organisation. They have a particular idea, which is fantastic, but they don't really want to share. And what I would love to is a network, and a complete network across the United Kingdom, where everyone can share all their different ideas and get things running as one an umbrella organisation. I'm trying my best to do that. I'm trying to sort of evoke the organisation, which is not an official one, but I do all my campaigning under the banner of Knife Crime Prevention UK. It's meant to evoke that sort of, it's meant to evoke a national campaign rather than just a local one. We need to deliver education. We need to create safe spaces and alternative youth clubs, mentoring schemes, evening programs. We need to obviously promote the surrender schemes, awareness campaign, and we need to normalise the act of actually giving up a knife can actually save lives. On the saving lives issue, I developed I've developed the track scheme, the track system, which will hopefully, even if it saves one life, it will be well worth it. It's an acronym which I devised. I created it with the best sort of research, with first aid institutions, St. John's Ambulance, National Health Service, and that type of thing. And it gives even the uninitiated, even somebody with no actual practical first aid, a way to probably save somebody's life. Again, if you go onto my website, you can see there's a link within the website, and it will take you directly to a video which goes across the track system. As for Allen and Deeside, well, it has it does have a window of opportunity, because knife crime hasn't quite taken hold here yet, but it will. It is growing all the time, and we need to have schools which will welcome people like myself and other organisations to give preventative education. We need councils to invest in youth engagement, and we need our community, as with all communities across the country, to support campaigns like mine and others around me, not with just words but with action. And I truly believe that by doing this together, we can build a culture where carrying a knife is not seen as protection but as a risk, where young people feel safe enough to choose a different path. And as I said before, I am available to give a presentation to your council, Councillor Fenwick, and in fact any council who might be listening to today's podcast. But thank you, Councillor Fenwick, for the question. Well, all I can say is that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining me today on Open Surgery. Whether you're tuning in from a busy city street or a quiet corner of Allen and Deeside, I appreciate you being part of this dialogue. A dialogue that refuses to shy away from tough questions and complex realities. We've touched on issues today that affect lives in both seen and unseen ways, and we've challenged narratives, raised doubts where they're needed, and explored how communities, big or small, can push for better. That's the heart of this podcast, not just to speak, but to listen, learn, and lead together. But this conversation doesn't end here. It's only just begun, and I want you to get yourself involved. If there's something you'd like me to discuss, if there's a question you're struggling to get an honest answer to, or if you simply want to put a topic on the table that others might be afraid to mention, then reach out. Message me directly at edwinduggan.co.uk or find me on social media. No matter how challenging or controversial your question might be, I will tackle it head on in a future episode, because this platform belongs to us, not the gatekeepers, not the institutions, but to the people who care enough to ask. So until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep speaking up, because conversations like these are how real change begins. Bye-bye for now.